Why would private defense agencies benefit? Okay, to summarize, what I said is that the case for anarchy can be made on two grounds, one moral, one economic. The moral one is that it's uncivilized and it's barbaric to treat each other that way. Governments get no rights that individuals don't have. If an individual doesn't have a right to take my TV, a government doesn't have a right to take my TV without my permission. And the economics of it is that the market failure arguments are all highly problematic. Couldn't convince anyone if he thought about it, but a lot of people with PhDs in economics don't think about it clearly because they're not unbiased, because they realize that if the government went, so would a lot of their jobs. And with that, I conclude my remarks. Questions? Objections? Young man in green?
Yes, sir. In theory, I mean, I guess I agree with pretty much everything you say, but it seems that in practice it would be very difficult to implement because you're assuming that everyone is going to be living by the same moral standard, that we're all going to be doing mutual trade and mutual voluntary agreements. But someone's always going to be willing to not play by the rules, and so someone's going to have a gun and say, "This is what I want." So it eventually comes down to which group of men with guns offends us the least. There's always going to be someone who's willing to cheat and take over.
Well, you're quite right. There'll always be 1 or 2% of bad guys who will be uncivilized. And what I'm saying is, let's not allow that to percolate in the whole society, because that's all government is. And as for, some private enterprise criminal, some hoodlum who's raping or murdering or something like that, where do you think we'd be safer? With Rent-A-Cop? Or with government cop? Right now we've got government cop. There are all sorts of rapes going on around here. They wouldn't tolerate that at Disney World. Right? They would have cameras, they would have police, they would have young, attractive ladies in miniskirts who were cops with guns. They would stop this a lot quicker than government cop. You see, everyone makes fun of Rent-A-Cop. But we have Rent-A-Pizza, we have Rent-A-Pen, we have market pens and market pizzas. Why not apply the ideology or the insight that we have when we realize where the good pens and the good pizza come from to good police?
Well, on a small scale, yes, but let's say I was already a billionaire businessman and I had the resources to say I'm going to ditch my morals and fund a small private army of thousands of men with guns, and no one else does. Everyone else is living on the system you propose. And I can take over a large chunk of a nation or an island and say, no one else is going to take this from me, because I will shoot you.
What you describe is what we now have.
Exactly. And I think that was inevitable, and it comes to the choice of which group to
go. It's called government. Look, the key here is legitimacy. If 99% of the people don't give you legitimacy, look, the mafia, take the mafia. We've all watched The Godfather. If we didn't have laws against drugs and laws against gambling and laws against prostitution and laws against pornography and laws against other things like that, the mafia would disappear. They have no comparative advantage in the supply of those services. Look, out in Nevada where prostitution is legal, there's no mafia. They don't have any comparative advantage in supplying prostitution services. You get private people doing that. Look, I guarantee you that if tomorrow we banned pens, the mafia would take over pens. Next question. Dan.
Walter, I agree with the majority of your conclusions. I, as well, am a staunch anarcho-capitalist and would consider myself not to rest until the rest of these students share similar opinions. All the more reason why I think it's worth bringing up the fact that while your arguments for anarchism are probably good arguments, they're certainly not the best.
Shut up, Dan.
It seems that on your own accord, with regard to top economists not buying into anarchism because of an adherence to market failure theory, top economists in major programs do buy into the importance of anarchist thought. Doug North, Barry Weingast, Andre Schleifer, Avinash Dixon have all published heavily on the topics of anarchism and self-governance, and all also adhere to the possibility for market failure. Mainly because I think your structure of dialogue kind of sounds like a Jedi mind trick. There are no market failures. Your Austrian tricks don't work on me. Is what the typical response is going to be. Instead, we should let the baby have its bottle. Say yes, there are market failures, and now the question is whether or not government is an applicable tool at resolving those market failures. And the fact of the matter is that governments still lack critical knowledge and incentives at overcoming under-provision, asymmetric information problems, so on and so forth. Some governments are so bad at overcoming those things that we'd be better off without them absolutely. Somalia is a case in point. 30% of the world that we live in today is the condition of failed and weak states. And if we don't understand the functional processes of potential anarchism and self-governance, we have no recommendations to go into those contexts and help promote trade and exchange and prosperity. Like, if promoting those things through central planning has failed abysmally. And I think those are the best arguments for anarcho-capitalism.
Well, I'm glad that we're all anarchists now in the American Economic Association. It's a very happy discovery of mine. I'm not familiar with the anarchistic writings of the people you mentioned. Schleifer, I have an article attacking him on something. I forget what. I read something. I forget what I'm attacking people on. But Milton Friedman is no anarchist. David Friedman is, but Milton isn't. Buchanan and Tulloch aren't. Milton Friedman is a road socialist. I mean, I think that if
you can't agree on secession on your grounds.
Look, every once in a while, economists are surveyed. Frey and 4 other guys on the American Economic Review did a survey of economists. They asked them 25 questions. I published one like that for Canadian economists. When you ask things like minimum wage and rent control and free trade, you get a lot of consensus. I think the articles are called Consensus in Economics, ? Something like that. But those are the only 3 where you get a lot of consensus. The rest of it, you don't get much consensus, and among economists, you don't get much free enterprise, let alone anarchism. So I'd have to call upon you to give me the citations of all these anarchists around, unbeknownst to me. I'd be surprised if that were true. Yes?
Students graduate, they look for jobs. The only jobs that are available are with federal government, for example. And let's say they come down to that question, do you support organizations or whatever the question is that advocate joining the United States, and say, well, yeah, I was talking with somebody and I joined a group that was an anarcho-capitalist. Would you recommend that they don't admit to their philosophical beliefs, or how would you recommend it?
Well, the question is, should we advocate the forcible overthrow of the government? I'm not advocating the forcible overthrow of anything. I don't have any specialization or comparative advantage in anything to do with guns. I have a concealed carry permit. I'm not allowed to carry here because this is a gun-free zone, but that's a whole other issue. What I'm trying to do is make the philosophical case for it. And if I can convince, not 99% of the electorate, but a small plurality, 20, 30%. If Ron Paul were running for, and he's no anarchist, but he's close, or he's as close as any politician is, if he were running for president,